Thank you, Betty. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome, as Betty said, to the second annual Luminaries Night, brought to you by the Dependable Engines Association. I'd like to thank the good folks at Your Rest for the food and beverage, as well as the Screamin' Eagles Jazz Trio over there for their wonderful music. We are an incorporated nonprofit, legally separated from RTX and Pratt, but physically, emotionally, personally connected to each other. The Dependable Engines Association becomes fully actualized when every single Pratt & Whitney employee and retiree joins. We are a connecting organization. So hop on board and start connecting. We are privileged and proud tonight to bring you the second class of the Pratt & Whitney Hall of Fame inductees tonight. The Luminaries Night theme is Timeless Challenges and Mitigations, and we have 4 luminaries here tonight to share specific challenges they faced, how they mitigated those challenges, as well as vulnerabilities and lessons learned. We encourage the audience to engage with them in the Q&A section. Many of you are facing similar challenges today, but fear not. There is a goldmine of experience waiting to be tapped into. We are a connecting organization. I would also like to thank those who purchased tables and blocks of tickets, making it easier for newer employees to make these connections. So, without any further ado, I'll turn it over to Dan Ward, who will start us off tonight with this year's Pratt & Whitney Hall of Fame inductions.
Thank you, sir. Well, good evening, everybody. It's nice to see a really big crowd. And I was joking with Ray before this started that I can't believe they let 2 Marines on a microphone with alcohol present, but we'll try to do what we can to stay professional here for the evening. But my name is Dan Ward, as you mentioned, and I have the privilege of co-chairing the Pratt & Whitney Hall of Fame Committee, along with my colleague Addison Shelton from the Military Engines Earned Value team. And to be honest, Addison built much of this from the ground up. And while she couldn't be here tonight, I'm honored to represent the committee on her behalf. I also wanted to recognize Debbie Petrelli over here on the table. She's been instrumental on our Hall of Fame committee, helping out in many ways, and she did a lot of the heavy lifting for this event tonight, so thanks, Debbie. Okay, the Hall of Fame is a recognized organization, as Ray had mentioned, and it was unveiled last year as part of our 100th year anniversary. It celebrates people who have shaped Pratt & Whitney through extraordinary contributions across engineering, operations, business, consulting, and our earliest founding years. Employees nominate employees, and a committee evaluates the submissions, and the company then reviews the selections that we have. And each spring at this event is when we unveil the recipients of the award. So last year, our inaugural inductees came from the Founders and Early History category to honor our 100th anniversary. Those names, Frederick Rentler, Andrew Wilgoose, George Meade, John and Jack Burrup, Don Brown, they all form the groundwork of who we are today and represent the caliber of employees that are within the Hall of Fame. You may have seen them up on the screen earlier. So to your, well, you're all in a circle, but to my right over here, underneath the sign that says restrooms for now, that's going to be our Hall of Fame. So through those doors, it'll be a permanent display, and with the help of the Dependable Engines Association, we'll be working to build the space in the coming years. So right now, it's dedicated to the 100th anniversary, but in a year from now, we'll start our Hall of Fame in the hall that's over there. So with that, it's my privilege to introduce the 2025 Hall of Fame inductees. Next. The first inductee, as you can see, Frank Gillette. known across the industry as the father of the F-119. He was the director of advanced military engines, and for over 36 years, more than 55 you include his consulting, Frank led the design, development, and production of the F-119 from its earliest concepts through flight and operational capabilities. In retirement, Frank also continued to serve the company and the broader propulsion community through consulting, extensive teaching, and 21 years of volunteering at the U.S. Air Force Academy. His contributions to propulsion leadership within national organizations and his numerous honors reflected a career that fundamentally shaped modern military aviation. So we proudly induct Frank Gillette into the Hall of Fame. Next is Leonard Hobbs. He was an engineer who helped bridge the era from an early aviation into the jet age. Hobbs was instrumental in the development of the radial engines through World War II and played a pivotal role in the creation of the J-57, which was the first axial flow twin-spool turbojet and first engine to surpass 10,000 pounds of thrust. His work was recognized by the industry when he received the Collier Trophy in 1952. The J-57 went on to power 13 military applications and led to the JT-3 for commercial service. Hobbs became Vice President of Engineering in 1944, later Vice Chairman of United Aircraft, our predecessor, and remained on that board until 1968. His innovations laid the groundwork for generations of propulsion advances. So tonight we honor Leonard Hobbs for his lasting impact on our industry. Third inductee is the late George Truitt. He was the champion of quality in foreign object debris control. Working at the Columbus Engine Center, George was the FOD and quality trailblazer of Pratt & Whitney and established the gold standard for FOD programs. Through daily audits, rigorous training, international engagements, and relentless commitment to continuous improvement. His expectation for excellence elevated every cell he touched, and his leadership strengthened Pratt & Whitney's reputation for quality. George's impact on our FOD culture is still felt here today. And I believe his family is online on Zoom right now, so welcome to his family online. And it's an honor to induct George Truitt into the Hall of Fame. Next inductee is James Young, the founder and first president of what we know today as Pratt & Whitney Canada. Under Young's leadership, Pratt & Whitney Canada evolved from a service center for Wasp and Hornet engines into a manufacturing powerhouse, ultimately leading to the development of the revolutionary PT-6, an engine that would power more than 130 types of aircraft. Not 130 aircraft, 130 types of aircraft. His leadership extended throughout World War II, where he oversaw critical government contracts, and he remained with the company as chairman and as a board member for decades. His vision shaped an entire division of our company that continues to thrive globally. So tonight we recognize James Young for laying the foundation of Pratt & Whitney Canada's legacy. And if you haven't heard, Maria Della Posta, the current president of Pratt & Whitney Canada, is retiring. So perhaps we have another future Pratt & Whitney Canada inductee. Okay, our next inductee is the late Rob Rosati. He was the driving force behind the creation of International Aero Engines, IAE. Bob was an engineer and convinced Pratt & Whitney, Rolls-Royce, MTU of Germany, the Japanese Aero Engine Corporation, Fiat Avio, to join to create what would become one of the most successful engine programs in the world, powering the A320 family. Bob began as an experimental test engineer and went on to contribute to nearly every major commercial and military program of his era, including extensive work on the JT-3D, TF-33, TF-30, JT-9D, and the PW-2000 family. He later led billions in global engine sales and twice served as IAE's president and CEO. And I'm honored to say that his family is here today, Bob and Lisa, who are accepting the honor on his behalf. Please join me in welcoming Robert Rosati to the Hall of Fame. go. Get a photo real quick. Thank you. One more. Last but not least, our final inductee here with us today is John Tyrone, Design Chief and Engineering Technical Fellow in the Compression Systems Engineering. John was recognized by 3 independent nominations, and his career represents the highest standards of technical leadership, innovation, and mentorship. From Advanced Turbines in West Palm Beach to his roles as design lead, chief, manager, subject matter expert, fellow, and ultimately technical fellow, John played a central role in shaping 5th and 6th generation platforms, as well as the GTF. He influenced design criteria, engineering standard work, and enterprise-wide technology development. Just as impactful is his mentorship, empowering engineers through trust, clarity, and quiet confidence. His leadership extended into academia, where he strengthened our partnerships with the University of Hartford and the University of Connecticut, ensuring that the next generation of engineering talent thrives. So please join me in congratulating and honoring John Tyrone for his extraordinary career and enduring legacy. Let him come all the way up. Thank you. Congratulations, my friend. So congratulations all 2026 Hall of Fame inductees. Now I'll turn it over to Betty Higgins, who is the Vice President of the Dependable Engines Association, for our panel discussion.
Thank you, Dan. So we are honored tonight to have several retirees come and talk to us about their timeless mitigations, challenges and mitigations. So first I would like to introduce Dan Webb. He had been at Pratt for 37 years, and he held a variety of roles while he was here. He held assignments at Pratt Canada, Hamilton Standard, and was in our DC office, when he was Vice President of Advanced Commercial and Military Programs, Marketing and Sales. And tonight, he's going to talk to you about the JTAD Hush Kit program. Please welcome Dan Webb to the stage. Our next coming up is Steve Heath. He worked at Pratt for 34 years. When he retired, he was president of the commercial engines business. He also was president of IAE, the International Aero Engines, and he also served some time in customer service and sales and marketing. Please welcome Steve Heath to the stage. Next on our panel is Bob Saya. At retirement, Bob was the Vice President of Commercial Engine Development Program. He was here for 38 years. He also was part of the Engine Alliance program and the GP 7000 program. Please welcome Bob Saya to the stage. And last but not least is Mike Moeller, also known as M2. He worked at Pratt for 9 years, joining us after serving many years in the Marines. Air Force. Oh. He was part of the ICS program, Business Development Integrated Customer Service, and he accumulated more than 4,400 flying hours when he was with the Air Force. Please welcome Mike Moeller to the stage, who will talk to us about Business Acquisition Center of Excellence. Thank you all for joining us. And now, Dan, can you start us off?
I'll bet I can. Thanks for being here. I owe this opportunity to my good friend Dick Fair, who's supposed to be doing what I'm about to do. Dick, you got someone else to paint your fence. Let's talk about hush kits. A hush kit is something that makes the AD quieter. It also helped pay the bills. And let me explain why. In the late 80s, early 90s, the stage 3 noise rule was about to put the guillotine on the 8D fleet. We had about 4,000 airplanes flying in 1990, and the stage 3 noise rule was about to put them out of business by the end of the 90s. Now, the economic life of these machines should have been in 2010, 2015, something like that. So these machines were generating 30 million engine hours a year, and this is $1990. And about $30 of that went to the Pratt bottom line in cash. That's rough numbers, that's $1 billion a year in $1990, which is about $2.5 billion today. So that was not going to be allowed to happen because we, first of all, didn't have a very robust single aisle strategy. So we needed that fleet to stay flying as long as possible. So the answer is, let's make the engine quieter. And to do so was absolutely necessary. 727, 737, the DC-9. The production of the 727 ended in 1984, 737 in 1988, and the DC-9 in 1982, which means they should fly till 2014, 2018, and 2012, respectively. So what do we do? How do we go about addressing this issue? Well, the first thing you do is you pluck me out of the V2500. They're still searching for something I can do. It hadn't worked so far, so they said, let's try this. So, go make these airplanes compliant with stage 3, which is about a 10 decibel reduction across the 3 noise criteria, about 3 or 4 decibels each condition. So, we needed to develop the hardware on these existing engines and package them in kits. We needed to find partners, and this was the very biggest obstacle. Boeing was not interested. In fact, they were against this. Douglas was somewhat helpful. The 737 was the biggest problem. We had about a dozen aircraft model engine combinations to certify. Our management did not want any part of the STC, Supplemental Type Certificate. They didn't want to own any aircraft STCs for fear of annoying Boeing and Douglas. That was a bit of an obstacle. And then we needed to sell these things. Finding partners who could sell was almost impossible. So, Boeing not cooperative. When we announced to the public that we were going to do this, Dean Thornton, who was then the president of Boeing, called Sel Burson out to Seattle, and then Sel invited me. And Boeing rolled out their technical staff for half a day to convince us that it couldn't be done. And when it was over, presentation was over, Dean Thornton, who was a kind of a leathery old guy, turned to Sel and said, Sel, what do you think? And Sel turned to me and said, well, Dan, what do you think? And I said that Boeing had a staff that was the envy of the industry. And if I had that staff, my confidence level would go from 90 to 100. don't give these guys anything hard to do. Well, that wasn't really a very smart thing to say. But it bailed sell out, and Boeing, I think, decided it was going to be trouble. So, what did we do then? Well, manpower was an issue at Pratt. We were deep in the 4000 program and V2500 program. So I had a staff of highly motivated people who were left over from those two programs. I needed 3 partners. They had to have airplanes. They had to have crews. They had to have some technical infrastructure. They had to know how to get and hold an STC and how to sell them. So how did we do this? Well, we searched and we found 3 people who could meet or nearly meet our criteria. FedEx on the 727. Fred Smith at FedEx bought the last 100 727s. And fortunately for us, he did the cargo doors on those airplanes. So he knew, he had Boeing data, and he knew how to get STCs, and he knew how to deal with Boeing. That solved a big problem on a 727. They had flight crews. They were highly motivated. They had, at one point, they had about 180 727s. They needed this to happen, and that's really critical. Then we got Airborne Express at DC-9s. They flew out of Wilmington, Ohio, just southeast of Dayton. They were somewhat secretive. Douglas had a noise system that the industry suspected. They were very private about it. They let ABS use Airborne Express, now DHL. They let Airborne Express use that system. Airborne would not let us in their truck for fear of annoying Boeing, Douglas, and Boeing probably. But they were motivated also. They had about 60 airplanes, and they needed those airplanes to fly. They fly early in the morning. Both Airborne and FedEx flew early in the morning, had a lot of local airport pressure that could shut them down. So highly motivated. Third and most difficult was the 737. Had the biggest noise problem because the wing-mounted engines, the tail-mounted engines get shaded by the wing on approach, so their noise signature is a little bit better than the twin 737. Plus, 737s had the higher powered 8Ds, 15s and some 17s. So they were a challenge. We had to look at a suppressor for that. The suppressor takes on ambient air in addition to the mixer. It takes on ambient air. There's an extension to the nacelle, and it is quite quiet, but it was a performance problem. It had about a 4% performance hit. But it was a success because we needed to tell the world we could do this. And we certified the stage 3 on the 737. I don't think we sold very many suppressors. I don't know if Larry Gray or anybody's here who knows that. I don't think we sold very many of those. They were expensive. And we found as we went through the program, a lot of customers could reduce the gross weights of their airplanes and could reduce the engine thrust. And so we could sell kits, and they could rearrange their fleet and keep them flying. So as we went along, the mix of of the hardware that we sold was changed. So we had a mixer on the back end. On the front end, we moved the IGVs. The 8D has inlet guide vanes, but they were too close to the first stage low and the fan, and and it had a siren effect. So we had a tone in the front end that we took away by moving the IGVs forward a little bit. So we had a package of parts. We could put them in the engine for a very little cost, and we could meet stage 3. Now, we estimated early on that we could capture half of the fleet, 2,000 airplanes, because some were going to retire for economics. 30-year-old airplane is probably not economic. So we guessed 2,000. We ended up selling 1,960 kits. 960 airplanes worth of kits. So we came really close. That number's a little bit debatable. But anybody who's here wants to debate it, let's see you outside. So, one of the ways we mitigated this problem, so Boeing said we couldn't do this. Boeing didn't know what we could do to the engine. They didn't really understand that we had some tricks we could do to the engine. The other thing is, we found that noise is 5 dBs of noise and 100 dB of corrections. So we became very good at flight test. For example, we would negotiate with farmers in Arizona to try microphones in strawberries, cotton. That was, I thought cotton would do it, and watermelons. Strawberries, anybody ask you, it's strawberries. Strawberries got us 0.3 of a dB. Now, was it really the strawberries? I don't know, I just know how to plant microphones now. So, we accomplished our goal. We saved about $2 billion in 1990 dollars by avoiding premature retirement. That is to say, stopping the curve of retirement from going like that to going like that. That's about $5 billion in today's dollars. It didn't help our single aisle strategy very much. And the reason that we had annoyed Boeing, and something that everybody should understand, probably you all do, but I'll say it anyway, that the business case for Pratt and the business case for Boeing has as much in common as a cosine function does with a sine function. They hardly ever meet. Boeing gets progress payments on their airplanes. When you order an airplane from Boeing, pay me. Progress payments along the way, and by the time the airplane is delivered, they're 100% paid. Selling engines is like selling kittens. Free or best offer. We wait 25 years. So if you try to negotiate a common business arrangement with Boeing or Airbus, and I've been involved in that, when they see how backloaded we are, they have to go spend time with their family. It's awesome what we go through on a business plan. So Boeing wants the fleet to go away. We want the fleet to stay. Tired iron. You're going through tired iron now, I think. Pratt loves tired iron. Boeing doesn't like tired iron. They don't make money in the aftermarket. They make some, but they haven't been very successful at that. So, to make a long story even longer, what did I learn? Well, they're listed here for the most part. One is motivated people can move mountains. That people, ABS and FedEx were not going to let this go away. FedEx had hired a noise consultant because they don't do acoustics. They had a noise consultant who told them about a year before they got there that they couldn't do it. And we had a meeting in Memphis. They no longer had an acoustic consultant. We had Paul Montour, may he rest in peace, who's a hero of this program. Someone who I had to save from being laid off in the middle of the program. Paul was a brilliant acoustician who knew how to plant microphones and knew where to plant them. Highly motivated, highly skilled. That leads to the second point. Pratt & Whitney has talent everywhere you look. I didn't have a big staff, had a very small staff. I whined every time I got a chance. It didn't help. Ed Crow taught me once, I remember Ed's here somewhere, once when I was whining in his office, not in this program, but Ed took his hands and he went like that. And I went, oh my God, I'm whining again. If you have a problem at Pratt and you don't have anybody quote on your team, everybody in this room, I don't know most of you, of course, but Everybody in this room would be willing to help anybody else. That's my experience at Pratt all that time. You can go ask anybody a question, and they will be first annoyed, and then second, curious, and then third, they'll be annoying you. That was my honest experience. We had lots of issues, technical issues, acoustic issues, not that that's not technical, but we could always get help from the V2500 program, from the 4000 program. People sitting at their desk who know stuff are more than happy to share what they know. I've never had an experience where somebody would say, well, sorry, I can't help you. I mean, literally. So don't ever give up. If you have something that looks insolvable, you're not looking hard enough. Never let your boss get surprised. I'd be surprised if you didn't know that. But don't go to your boss, especially if he's Sel Burson, and say, well, Northam needs a $10 million loan. He said, you think they'll pay me back? I said, yeah. He said, well, put your badge on the table. So I was a fool, I did. He had to slam the door, sat down, he said, Webb, God damn it, don't ever do that. Nobody puts their badge on the table. I didn't know that rule. But it was a surprise that bothered him. He should have been given, he said, you don't have to go into Hartford and get your ass kicked. I said, no, Sel, it's a short walk from me. And then last, don't quit. Don't quit. I don't think anybody in this room would ever quit. But don't quit, don't give up. There is help inside of Pratt. There's a lot of really smart people at Pratt. And if you don't believe that, wait till you retire and see what the rest of the world's like. So I'll leave the rest for the Q&A. And Dick, thanks for the opportunity. Thank you so much.
Well, good evening. How you all doing? Everybody's having fun? We hope we keep it that way. I need some help here. First of all, it's really good to see a lot of old friends and colleagues here. Anytime we can get an event together like this and just see old friends and share ideas and stories, it's a special time. I thought what I would share with you guys tonight is during my, I'll call it relatively early careers at Pratt, there were a lot of lessons learned, both personally and I think with the company. The first one that's on the chart here is obsolete your prized product, which back in the 70s, 80s was obviously the JTAD, as Dan just explained. Because if you don't obsolete the product you think is doing you the best good, somebody else is going to do it for you. And I think we've seen that experience, and we'll talk about it. So, as Dan said, the JTAD was one of the most successful engines in aviation history. We used to power over 70% of the narrow-body single-aisle fleet. And as Dan said, it was 737s, 727s, DC-9s, MD-80s. Pratt & Whitney owned the narrow-body market. We produced over 14,750 engines all the way up through the 1980s. This was an amazing accomplishment, and Dan, thank God, was doing everything he could to keep those things flying, which I would call as sort of a harvest strategy. You know, keep making money on what you've got. But one of the things you got to do is start thinking about what's next. You know, what the hell, what are we going to do? Because things occur very quickly in this industry. Today, the CFM56 powers over 60% of that single aisle market that we used to own. They have over 33,000 units delivered to date and thousands more on order. It's phenomenal. The V2500, thank God, has delivered more than 7,800 engines, and as of the mid-2025, we've delivered more than 2,400 aircraft powered by the GTF. So what happened? What happened to make this big change in the aviation industry that essentially took Pratt down as the #1 producer? How did Pratt go from powering over 70% of the market to less than 40%, I would say, today, despite developing 2 engines, the V2500 and the GTF, in that time frame? My position, this is just me now, I contend it was the result of a loss of focus on our core single-aisle market and business strategy, and we encountered both technical and development challenges along the way, as a lot of you know, not just in the V2500, but also in the GTF. So that's my big premise as the major lesson we've learned, in my opinion, in the past 20 years. Second thing we need to do is we needed to learn how to partner with the enemy. Now I'm talking about Rolls-Royce, because that's how we started with the V2500. Bob Rosati, who was honored tonight, thank God, reached out, went to Rolls-Royce, went to all the other partners in the V2500, and convinced them that something needed to be done to compete in this narrow-body market segment. And they proposed the V2500. Now, the 1980s, as Dan had pointed out, were a very busy time in commercial aviation history. Boeing was in the process of certifying the 767 and the 757 aircraft. Both airplanes Pratt was on. Airbus was certifying the A320 and started development of the A330 and the A340 aircraft. And Boeing was certifying the 737 classic aircraft, unfortunately, re-engineering it with the CFM56. That's a lot of activity, a lot of development, a lot of money being spent in commercial aviation. So IAE was formed by Bob and the team to develop the V2500 to compete with CFM at that point on the A320, rather than giving them sole source. So to try to sort out everything that was going on in the market and review our business strategy and deal with all of this activity, as a lot of companies do, Pratt hired a consultant. We hired a consultant. Some of the conclusions that came out of this consultancy were, one, the current hub-and-spoke route system used by all the airlines was going to be replaced by point-to-point. I don't know if any of you remember that, but that meant that it was not going to be narrow-body, single-aisle market aircraft in big demand. It was going to be wide bodies, taking people from city A to city B. That was a conclusion. That meant there was going to be a higher demand for wide-body aircraft and therefore higher thrust engines. That's starting to go into the strategy. Number two, oddly enough, all engines cost $2 million to make. Not quite sure where that came from, but that's what they said. All engines cost $200 million to make, but higher thrust engines command a higher price on a dollar per pound of thrust basis, and therefore you're going to have more profit with these higher thrust engines. So this led to a strategic and technical focus on wide-body engines, despite the fact that really our business is about spare parts sales and maintenance now, right? And how do those spare parts sales get generated? By engines and airplanes putting on lots of cycles and burning up parts. I think the GTF knows that right now, right? You're in the middle of that. So what happened was the focus became largely within Pratt & Whitney and all the program management, technical, marketing organizations, kind of a focus on wide-body engines, big thrust engines, and that sort of stuff. And the other part of it was we realized that sales of these engines, even though they had higher prices, as Dan sort of pointed out, we got about zero for the engine we sold, and we had to wait for a long, long time before our spare parts sales were going to kick in. There were no margins on the sales of commercial jet engines. Fortunately, IAE was not viewed, unfortunately, IAE was not viewed favorably because of the culture. It was a bit of an orphan, or somebody expressed it as the red-haired child. I don't know where that came from. But it was a bit of an orphan at Pratt and Rolls-Royce because it was taking resources and kind of competing with everything else going on, and it was not on big airplanes. So partnering with the enemy also had other issues, like issues of control. IE was split up into many different organizations, either headed by Pratt or headed by Rolls-Royce, and they had to report back to their parent company as to what was going on, what they were doing. And the parent company, quite frankly, said, don't bother me too much with that shit that's going on at IAE. I mean, I got other big things to do. So despite the fact that it was considered going to IAE was kind of a bad career move, I took a job because Rob's father convinced me to come over to IAE, and my job was to go out to Seattle and convince Boeing that the V2500 needed to be on the 737 to make that aircraft successful and compete with the CFM56. I'll have to say I failed. After about a year of doing product installation studies, lots of teams coming out, we were successful in getting Boeing to consider a stretch of the 737 Classic. It was a 737-400. The baseline engine that airplane studied and looked at what its potential was the V2500. So Boeing was finally softening up a little bit. Well, maybe the V2500 can really help us here on our 737 strategy. So there was a big meeting. Pratt & Whitney, President of Pratt & Whitney, some Pratt & Whitney senior management people, the Pratt & Whitney IAE folks, Bob Rosati, they all came out, and I had the privilege of giving a presentation about the V2500 on the 737-400, what a great airplane engine combination that was going to be and what did we do. The only issue was Boeing never pays the cost of putting a second engine on their airplanes. If you're the second guy on, you pay the bill. Whatever Boeing's certification bill is and flight test costs and all that stuff, you pay. And so Boeing presented to us at this meeting $75 million. It's going to cost IAE $75 million to certify the V2500 on the 737, and probably it would have been the 737-400 that we started on. Now, there was a lot of uncertainty going on at the time. Maybe some of you remember. Boeing was looking at a 7J7 with an unducted fan GE engine on the back of it. There was a 7-7. In fact, even IE proposed an engine, geared engine for that, geared fan. So there was some uncertainty as to, the whole future of the 737. So what happened, the Pratt & Whitney president at the time said, $75 million, that's too much. We're not willing to pay you $75 million to certify on the 737. Now, from my point of view, having been there for a year and a half, busting my ass to get us to this point, $75 million to Pratt & Whitney as a 30% partner was $23 million. As far as I was concerned, that was cheap, and I didn't understand why we weren't going to get certified on that airplane and start that program. But the fact is, it didn't happen. We had a golden opportunity in my mind to get on the 737, and strategically we turned it down. Why, I contend? I contend because we had so much going on at Pratt on the wide-body, large engine market, we didn't want to make the investment. So I returned to Pratt East Hartford in late '86, and eventually was assigned to set up what was called an IE war room in the old schoolhouse. This was about mid-1987. At that point, the V2500 program was in real trouble. We had a high compressor that was way off its efficiency targets. Each component had its own efficiency goal in the program. It was way off that. It didn't have any surge margin. And in fact, we couldn't even get the damn engine started in some of the few first tests where we had to drill holes in the rear compressor cases just to get this thing to light off. This was all within 8 months of the time we had to certify the engine for the A320 flight test program. That's a pretty compressed time frame. Also, what happened, have any of you heard of the V2500 Superfan? Anybody? The V2500 Superfan was something proposed by IAE to Airbus as another application of the V2500 to go on the A340. Now, this meant that the A340 could possibly compete with twin-aisle aircraft on a fuel burn basis, range basis, that sort of thing, because this machine was a very high bypass ratio geared fan with variable pitch fan blades. Pretty sophisticated, came out of the Pratt Advanced Programs Group, and IE made that proposal in about mid-year in '87, and Airbus actually took it to the customers. One big customer was Lufthansa, and they had orders for that. Now, I'll have to say, given the trouble with the high compressor, just certifying the current V2500, and then taking on the technology risk associated with the gear at this point, we're talking the mid-'80s now, the gear and a variable pitch fan, Pratt & Whitney threw it in his hands and said, we can't take that risk. We don't know how to do that. So what happened? We had a major, again, another senior management meeting, this time at Pratt & Whitney with Pratt & Whitney president, senior Pratt folks, and the senior IE Pratt & Whitney people to discuss what are we going to do with the V2500 program after all this. They were really thinking of killing the program. I can tell you that's how serious it got because of the big risk in actually being able to certify on time. Lucky me, I was the facilitator for this meeting and the presenter. Let me just make it short. The conclusion of the meeting was the V2500 had to be saved. And why was that? Because we could not let CFM go unchallenged in the single aisle market. So I fondly call it, and it became the block strategy. We got to certify the V2500. We got to get this A320 competitive, and we've got to look for more applications for the V2500. Cancellation costs would have been horrendous. And though we had some ideas about what we might be able to do to substitute the V2500, nothing was viable. So quite frankly, the V2500 was it. Now, happy ending, right, to the story? Rolls-Royce came up with the miracle of the 95B high compressor. You may not have heard about this before, but Rolls-Royce, 8 months prior to certification, was running at least 5 high compressor aero rigs to try to get something that actually performed and did what they had signed up for the program. Well, son of a gun, they pulled through. Pratt & Whitney Engineering had taken over the engineering at IE at the time. Rolls-Royce had it before. That was one of the splits. And fortunately, Pratt & Whitney Engineering was also a good change in the program to make sure that we did the right things technically. Now, that meeting was a very decisive meeting. And unfortunately for me, because I had so much history with the V and baggage, I'll call it, I told the Pratt president during that meeting that he screwed up. He made a major mistake. Not agreeing to pay the cost that Boeing wanted to certify the V on the 737 was a mistake because it would have really cemented our block strategy. We would have had 2 engines, Vs on both the 737 and the A320 today, and wouldn't that be a nice thing if that happened? What that led to was actually CFM getting more exclusivity on their future product line and stuff. Now, as the commercial says on TV, that wasn't smart for me to say that, but I did get a good deal on auto insurance. The next day, the executive vice president of Pratt came to my office and said, Steve, we like you a lot. We think you're very capable, but we need to pull you off this program of looking at the V2500 and that sort of stuff. So we're going to banish you to advanced programs and engineering. So that's where I was sent, so that they didn't have to listen to me anymore. But what was learned in this transfer, just to tell you that, you know, sticking to your guns and really deciding that, you know, what the right thing to do is, if you want to be successful, you have to do that. And by the way, your customers want you to be successful. So my assignment to work in advanced programs turned out to be not a career setback, as you would think, but quite frankly, an opportunity to both learn and grow. My first project was to take a unducted fan nacelle, a model, put it underneath an A320 wing, and run it in a test cell at British Aerospace in Bristol, England. Now, this was to sort out the drag issues and other issues with our advanced geared program, very early, very, very early in the stages. So I was headed to Airbus to meet with Jean Roeder and his team, who were the advanced airplane program group at Airbus. Now, you would think, surprisingly, why does Airbus even want to talk to us after the A340 geared fan fiasco at IAE? I have to tell you, they really loved that concept. They loved that engine. So they were willing to help us run this program, collect data, improve our technology or whatever, in getting this, perhaps someday, this geared fan on the A320. So, put the presentation together, thought I was going to have a good reception, flew to Toulouse. Jeff Suter, our Toulouse program office guy, met me at the airport. Said, Steve, we've had a change of plans. And I'm thinking, oh shit, here we go. He said, Bernard Ziegler, the Senior Vice President of Engineering and Flight Operations at Airbus, wants to meet you. Now, you know, guys, I'm a middle manager, labor grade. I'm 51. I'm not sure what that is today at Pratt. But I'm kind of a nobody. And I got the Senior Vice President of Engineering and Operations at Airbus wanting to meet with me at his country club in the Toulouse countryside. Okay, well, Jeff, I got to take a shower. You know, I just got off an airplane. I went, I took a shower, jumped in Jeff's car, and we drove. And we drove. And we drove. I don't know where it was in the Toulouse countryside, but it wasn't anywhere near Toulouse. So we get to this place. It's a gorgeous country club, big pool. We walk out to meet with Bernard Ziegler, and there's Bernard sitting all by himself at a table, waiting for me to show up. So I said, Bernard, I'm Steve Heath, very happy to meet you. I'm not sure why you want to meet me today, but I'm honored that we're here. He says, Steve, no, it's very important that I meet with you because I need to tell you a story. He said, when I was a young performance engineer at Airbus, and we're looking at the A320 aircraft and what can we do to make this airplane remarkable, even better. He said to me, we wanted to put fly-by-wire side stick controller in a commercial airplane for the first time. And the A320 was going to be the airplane to do that. Bernard said, so I was given the responsibility to present to Roger Bettet, who was the president of Airbus at the time, the proposal to do this. I was very concerned, very nervous. You know, this is a brand new technology, a brand new thing. So Steve, we had this meeting. We went through the airplane program, what was happening, and it was my turn to stand up and present my presentation. So I gave my presentation. I said, here's the fly-by-wire system, side stick controller. These are all the benefits it will have for our customers. Less fatigue, better reliability, better performance, all of these wonderful things. So I gave my presentation, and at the end of the presentation, I look around, everybody's quiet, and Monsieur Bettet, he stands up and he says, Monsieur Ziegler, very good presentation. One problem, it's all bullshit. It's all bullshit. All these reasons you give me for doing this, this is not the reason Airbus will do this. Airbus will do this. And the reason we will do this is because we represent advances in commercial aviation that no one else will do. We represent advancing the state of the art in our business. That's why we will do fly-by-wire on the A320, because we want to take the lead in this industry. So Bernard says to me, this is after a speech, you know, I got stuff dribbling down, you know, and I'm saying, oh, wow. And he looks at me and says, so Steve, you must push. You must be successful. The geared turbofan engine, high bypass ratio engines, that is the future of your propulsion systems in the aviation industry. You must ensure that this program goes forward and gets through. You must lead the industry in this technology. I didn't know what to say. That was a hell of an assignment given to me by one of the leading people in the aviation industry. That was inspiration. That was kind of what drove me from that point on out in support of both the V2500 and the GTF. That eventually led to flying a PW4000 Cord geared fan on the A340. That was with Airbus. Airbus wanted us to be successful. That is what we focus on. We focus on doing the right thing and advancing the state of the art in our industry. And that is the charge that we had as retirees when we worked at Pratt, and that is the charge I guess all new people at Pratt & Whitney need to step up to. So I say to you, good luck.
You want a water?
Yeah, it's right under the podium there.
Don't worry.
Yeah.
Well done, my friend.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, thank you.
Steve needs a water after that talk. He set me up. What can I say?
That was a purpose. I was supposed to set you up.
How many people in this room work on the GTF? How many people, keep your hands up, please. How many people have worked on the GTF? How many people wish they worked on the GTF? Unfortunately, I had that opportunity. So I'm Bob Sire, and I just want to talk a little bit about the GTF. And you guys know it probably much better than I do. You know, I'm an engineer, and so it's hard for me to understand some of these concepts. But in 2004, Pratt & Whitney had been selected to power the 787 by Boeing. We were the first engine selected. I don't know how many of you may have known that. And we made a conscious decision not to participate on the 787. We were very active with Steve's team on the V2500, and we were in the process of finishing certification on the GP 7200, which was powering the A380. And so we had a lot on our plate, and we elected, again, not to make a major investment on a new engine program. In late 2005, as the GP 7200 was nearing certification, the president at that time, Steve Finger, asked me to move from the GP program and to take the lead in this new product that we were going to call Next Generation Single Aisle, the geared turbofan. And so he gave us a good budget, gave us a real strong cross-functional team with really two objectives. One was to mature the geared architecture and put that on the 130 to 200 passenger commercial market segment. And with that investment, design a high compressor, a combustor, and a high pressure turbine that could be used by Pratt Canada so they could power the large business jet fleet, which was in the 12 to 18,000 pound thrust category, significantly higher when all of their product experience was. And Pratt Canada was successful in launching the PW800, and they now power the Gulfstream 500 and 600, which build about 60 to 70 aircraft annually. So it's a very, very strong platform in the business jet. So in 2006, as we made that selection not to play on the 787, Boeing was really struggling in that aircraft development program. But at the same time, they were very successful in increasing build rates, both Airbus and Boeing, because fleets were upgrading, modernizing equipment, airline fleets, and there was a lot of route expansion. So both Airbus and Boeing had no need to create a new aircraft that we could put a geared architecture on. So our strategic approach that we had hoped to get on an Airbus and Boeing program wasn't going to be successful. So we elected to go after the Bombardier C Series, which is now the A220, and the Embraer 190 family, which is now the E2 family, and use them as our platform, and then hopefully be able to penetrate Airbus and Boeing at a later date. But we needed to do something different because Boeing and Airbus had no need, and although Bombardier needed a power plant, it wasn't clear that that airplane would really get launched. So what we elected to do was to create a strategy, a paradigm shift in engine development. In the 1980s and the 1990s, typically engine fuel efficiency improvement was 5 to 6% at the cost of higher engine cost, manufacturing cost, and higher maintenance cost. So we took the objective of leveraging the geared architecture to guarantee greater than 12% fuel consumption, at the same time, a 20% reduction in maintenance cost, with a 50% reduction in nitrous oxide, which is a very significant player for takeoff and landing fees in Europe. And more importantly, to now allow a 150 passenger airplane to operate 24 hours a day in really noise-sensitive airports like Amsterdam and London. And the difference between a geared architecture in noise and a conventional engine, sorry, Steve, a V2500, is about 20 decibels. That difference is my voice without a microphone and the voice and the sound coming out of an egg beater. That's about 20 decibels, or in a regular egg beater or drink beater. I lost the word, but you don't understand what I'm sounding. That delta, 20 decibels, would allow now an airplane to leave at 11 o'clock between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m., making it a very significant contributor to overall utilization of a very expensive aircraft. So our real focus then, we had really two major focuses. One was to complete the technology maturation of the geared architecture, because we still had a ways to go to make sure that we could make it a commercial product. And then secondly, find a platform. So our first focus strategically was to build a demonstrator. And that demonstrator is on the back wall in the center of the room here. And that demonstrator was an 80-inch fan with a 3-to-1 gear ratio using an existing PW 6000 core. And our overall objective there was with that demonstrator to demonstrate a 20% fuel improvement relative to the 6000, and then to demonstrate the noise, installed noise, at the airplane level. So as we then created the design or the technology characteristics of that demonstrator, we ran that demonstrator in West Palm Beach in the middle of 2007. Late 2007. We then installed it on a Pratt-owned 747 in the middle of 2008, and then successfully installed it on an Airbus A340-600, which was an experimental airplane that we were participating in a technology program with Airbus. And that demonstrator really became the focus of how we were going to make the geared turbofan real. And the success of the Airbus flight test program really drove what we know today as the Pure Power PW1000G. Now, as we were going through this, we had a lot of conflicting objectives. Got to be good in fuel consumption, got to have low manufacturing cost, no exotic materials in the turbines, got to have 20% lower maintenance cost, but at the same time delivering the fuel consumption and the noise reduction. So there are a lot of conflicting objectives. So the team, both a technical team as well as the business teams, had significant hurdles to address, and they had to determine how to solve those problems with some innovative solutions. At the same time, we had to overcome the skepticism of the gear. Both Rolls-Royce and GE were really downplaying the execution of a geared architecture. GE was calling it old technology, poor in durability and reliability. And so we had to really understand the gear, because although we had had some demonstrators prior to this particular test vehicle, they really weren't flight worthy because of the characteristics of the gear, the oil system, and the ability to take flight loads. So the technical group had some really significant hurdles that they had to overcome. So our engineering team teamed with Sikorsky and Pratt Canada, which had a lot of geared experience. We built a gear facility in East Hartford, and through a lot of hard work, committed testing, we were able to really establish the right architecture to make it doable on a wing. And in that rig, we were able to run tests that we couldn't do on an aircraft, run with contaminated oil, 0 Gs, significant loads on the structure of the gear to make sure that the gears would stay in proper mesh. Because if the gears stay in proper mesh, they last for infinity. But when they don't mesh right, they'll destroy themselves really quickly. So we had to really understand how to handle that. At the same time, we had to overcome the skepticism in the industry, because everybody believed that Pratt was reaching, and if gears were so good, why wasn't Rolls-Royce and GE reaching for a geared architecture? So we had to find what I'll call industry influencers, both at the airplane and the OEM level, so that they would understand what we were doing. We kept them as part of the learning curve of the establishment of a geared architecture. A lot of communication, a lot of engagement, a lot of visits to them at the airlines or to West Palm and East Hartford to really show them the characteristics that we were finding as we were going through this technology maturation. Key airlines were American, Lufthansa, and Delta. At the same time, we took a real strong media presence. We were working closely with Ave Week, Flight International, some of the major European journals, doing interviews almost one a month. And we were successful in getting over a dozen journal covers as we went through our development, really enabling us to get a lot of market intelligence and press at really very little cost, but at the same time to get the awareness and the industry acceptance that the gear was real and it worked. But at the end, it all dealt with execution, doing what you say when you said it would be done. Now, we really had some really challenges. So we made this agreement to fly this geared architecture on an Airbus A340. Airbus ran every test that they would do to certify a commercial engine on their aircraft, 34 flight cards. And we had to make sure that we could pass that testing. So as we ran the engine in West Palm Beach and on our 747 flying test bed, we uncovered some major issues that were associated with the demonstrator. They were unique to that architecture, not necessarily something that today's GTF would experience, but we couldn't afford having a thumbs down by Airbus, especially since they would really be the judge stating that we were innocent. So as we ran the sea level and the 747 test, we understood where the limitations were, and we worked closely with Airbus. So as they ran their 34 flight cards, they didn't run into any of the operational issues that we uncovered during our own test program. And in most cases, they didn't even know that those limitations existed. So it's understanding what needs to be done, how it needs to be done, risk mitigating what you know, and setting expectations for success. Again, doing what you say when you say it will get done. And that's really the key element of why we're here today with a very successful program. And I always, when people would come up to me and say, well, you've done a great job on the GTF, I look at myself as a conductor in front of a lot of talented, expert musicians. And all I needed to do was to make sure that I stood in front of them and let them play the music. And this group did that. Thank you.
Good job.
Well done. That's great. Good job, conductor. Thank you.
Well, I have to tell you first, it's amazing to be back in Pratt's, my first time back in Pratt's second century. Pretty amazing. In this incredible hangar, which I haven't seen since it's been redone. It's truly amazing. Wonderful to see so many friends and colleagues and so many senior leaders. Rick, so glad you're here tonight. And of course, my former boss, the president of the entire military engines team, Jill, I'm glad you're here. You know, it's pretty daunting. It's pretty humbling to be the last speaker after listening to the amazing achievements of our Hall of Fame inductees and listening to all of the sage advice and insights from the three other luminaries. So I'll do my best. It is daunting to also know that especially for the more seasoned, mature, and experienced people in the room, I'm also the last person standing between you and the restroom break. So I'll do my best to be fairly concise. So I think everybody knows that all pilot stories start the same. There I was. September 2017. I'm in West Palm Beach and in a meeting with the then Director of Propulsion for the U.S. Air Force and his contracting team. And the meeting was fairly contentious. It was all about how poorly Pratt & Whitney performed as part of proposal delivery and getting on contract. In fact, I looked in my notes to make sure that I got the quote exactly right. He said, Pratt & Whitney is the worst in industry for proposal quality and timely delivery, as well as the most difficult to get on contract. If you don't fix it, we'll find alternatives. Well, So I went, wish I could have gone supersonic to get back to East Hartford, but I took a regular, probably not GTF powered at the time, but got back to East Hartford, talked with the then president of military engines, Matthew Bromberg, about what the director of propulsion had said, and I got very clear leader's intent. M2, fix it ASAP. Sure, easy, no problem. Starting in November 2017, we stood up a cross-functional Tiger team that started with a deep dive. And what they found is that the military engine's proposal process was decentralized, non-standardized, and the designated proposal lead was different every time, and he or she literally walked the proposal through every step of the process to the different organizations. It truly was a one-person show for each proposal. There were also split responsibilities. So Emmy delivered the proposal, but finance was responsible for providing the budget and keeping the metrics. And the metrics that we had, the only metrics that we had, showed that we had about a 65% on-time delivery, which is well below industry standards. But what the Air Force said was, actually, it's more like 35 or 40% because really you're talking about on-time delivery to the third or fourth or fifth extension. So, and it was hard for us to debate that because we didn't have any data. So after we did the deep dive, then they identified industry best practices. We were really lucky because Sikorsky, a sister company when we were with United Technologies, had one of the best proposal centers of excellence in the industry. And they were very helpful. As previous speakers have talked about, everybody was willing to help us. Sikorsky provided us with all the documents, their standard operating procedures, their booklet and training manuals, and it helped us immensely. So after we looked through all that, the recommendation was to stand up a new organization to centrally manage all proposal and contracting activities. The only way to go fast was to essentially take the Sikorsky model, modify it, and then apply it to Pratt & Whitney. And as you might expect, it was a perfect fit. The Sikorsky model moved into Pratt & Whitney, into ME, was absolutely perfect. So, right. So, in any case, President approved that in November 2017. We took the holidays with a deep breath, and then in January 2018, the Tiger team began, they built a very, very detailed plan. It included the mission, very clear mission statement, a standardized process modified from Sikorsky, the organizational structure that would essentially oversee the process, the scheduling requirements, including an annual forecast and budget, which we did not have a proposal forecast and a budget applied to that before 2019. So, and then the resources, which, as everybody knows, it's really easy to get additional people and additional money and office space. But in fact, actually, across ME, very helpful. We found that we needed 50 people from internal to military engines with various areas of expertise, estimators, proposal support, schedulers, et cetera. We needed about 25 to 30 finance experts from government pricing as part of the organization. 3 or 4 people from operations because they would be the interface with the suppliers. And then 15 external because we didn't have anything close to what we would call a proposal manager. No experience at all. So we had to go external to prior. We also had to define what the digital tools, what the data management systems were going to be, and then what are the metrics to start. On-time delivery and turnbacks were the only 2 that we really could really use to get started if we were going to go quickly. So, and then most importantly, you got to have a cool name, right? I mean, you can't go with the, it's the proposal center of excellence like Sikorsky. So Candace Berry was one of the members of the Tiger team, and she was kind of talking, just mulling, thinking about things, and she said, we've got to have a name that describes what we do. It's going to be the home base for all of the proposals and contracting activity across military engines. So everybody put everything up on the board. How do we make BASE? And it's like, can't do it. So hence, the Business Acquisition Center of Excellence is the home base. And from there, we hired the first director, Julie Donahue, and got started. By July 2018, we were simultaneously still building, still testing, but we began executing. We started by bringing the F-135 proposal team, which was mature, self-contained, did only F-135 proposals, but they had experience. So we brought them over as the seed corn and then formed the rest of the team, brought in additional personnel from across the programs, across from business development, from operations, and filled in around them, and then continued to work to hire, as you might expect, we couldn't we were having a very difficult time and delays in finding external hires that would fit into the organization. So, but we were working that. We picked a test proposal and ran it through the entire process. The base team ran it with help from program SMEs, and then began to transition the proposals over program by program. So F-100 team came over. We already had the F-135 team, worked it all the way through until we got to the classified programs. And again, as you might expect, the advanced programs with classifications and all of the restrictions that you had made it a special case, so we had to put it off to the side as we continue to go faster and faster and faster. Startup was smooth, no problems, everything went exactly as we planned. Oh yeah. I just want to check and see if everybody's awake out there. Just checking. So actually it was really, I'll use the term, it was choppy. It was really choppy. We were still modifying the tools. We were changing behaviors from self-protection inside and across those that didn't believe that we needed to change, to participation, to actually helping and participating in the new organization. And we're still building out the new process and finding out what works and what doesn't. So. As we got started, as we went through for the first 6 months, and then we started to see the proposals get higher. We had higher volume, they got more complex, and then the automated tools weren't working, surprise, surprise, weren't working exactly as we had expected. So by, I would say, May or June of 2019, I had been traveling quite a bit, doing international travel, and Julie had been and the team had been really working hard. But it got to the point where it was pretty clear from the survey results and then from just walking around that the team was overworked, they felt undervalued, and they truly were under attack. So I stopped all my travel for the rest of the year. And we took a strategic pause. And the team came up with a 31-hour immersion program. And they titled it, How an RFP Becomes a Contract. And we went through it step by step by step, cell by cell by cell, so that we could understand from pre-submittal all the way through to on contract what every task, what every detail was. It was the process. I think the understanding of the process was extremely valuable, especially since we identified the choke points, which were the main sticking point. We locked in the organization. We were done fiddling with it. We locked it in for stability. We closed the training gaps. We established a training program and created a training guide, and then executed a new funding strategy and added investments in automation and digital tools, and developed quantitative metrics with a institutional feedback to ME leadership. One of the things we found is that as you're hunkered down doing the work, without taking your head up, we didn't have an institutional feedback loop for the president and the ELT, so that they could understand the challenges that base was facing, as well as what they're doing right. And in fact, actually, we had seen a pretty substantial improvement in on-time delivery and in compliance. In November 2019, we started an education program across ME with the programs. We brought SMEs in from the programs and certified them as part of the proposal team, and then we restarted operations. In 2020 and 2021, we reaped the benefits. The base team reaped the benefits from the investment in automated tools and its growth and experience into a more mature organization with experienced professionals and participation and buy-in from the programs. It was amazing to actually watch this rheostat go from thou shalt not to you must do. It was and it really was a real stat over time. But by the end of 2021, the base had delivered a record number of on-time proposals with very, very few turnbacks. The U.S. Air Force especially was very pleased. In 2022 and 2023, we saw even more improvement. In May of 2022, Julie received a much-deserved promotion and moved on. Jarita Brazil took over as the director of base, and the organization transformed into a cutting-edge change engine organization. It was amazing to watch. Improved efficiency and effectiveness at every turn. During that time, it achieved an industry first. It digitized the proposal and contracting process and delivered to the Department of Defense the first 100% electronic proposal, no paper. It was pretty amazing. And then at the end of 2023, DoD recognized Pratt & Whitney as top tier for quality and timely proposals as a benchmark across the industry. And then you fast forward to today, and BASE is the innovate and accelerate phase, where there's nothing new to today is a new day. So we've got our new and improved digital tool. We've got advanced analytics. They've implemented a virtual proposal center that is the central hub for all proposal and contracting. It's where performers want to go. But it took a long time. So what are the lessons learned? Change is easy. But not in my experience. Change is hard. It's messy. You can expect resistance. No. You can expect vicious resistance. So, Borg-like resistance. So people and organizations, they don't like going from the familiar to the unknown. They certainly don't like going from the comfortable to chaotic. Certainly in the beginning, where change is always chaotic. So it has to start with a detailed, well thought out plan. It's everything, especially in a crisis, or especially when you have to go fast. That framework, you have to take the time to sit down and develop that plan. But as we all know, no plan survives first contact with reality. So you execute the plan until the facts and assumptions change. And then the team and the leaders have to have the courage to change to match the environment. You have to be able to adapt and overcome as the changes come to you. Mid-course corrections, critically important. That strategic pause probably saved the organization, because otherwise, I think the people would have just been so tired and the organization just probably wouldn't have survived. So, second is, and we all know this, in fact, the lessons learned are very similar to everything that you've heard already, is you hire great people, you give them clear guidance and the required resources, then get the hell out of the way, right? Let them roll, let them go. One key thing that I did learn, and I think Julie would agree, is that you bring in excellent top performers, but you also have to bring in excellent performers that are good teammates. You have to be able to trust the person next to you, the person above you, and the person that works for you, because that trust is what is going to enable you to overcome the resistance that you look in the future. That you'll see. Leaders also have to know when to step in. Even when the team doesn't think they need it, leaders have to know when it's time to step in and help them, not micromanage them. It's your job to provide them with additional resources if they need it, or protection when they need it as well. So change takes time. No matter what the director of propulsion said about change it, and you need to change it as soon as you can. I would say that the base team actually was fully operationally capable after 3 years. It took 3 years from day one, ground up, build an organization, and now, after the 3 years, base was institutional, and now I don't think that ME could perform its mission without the team doing what they do. As we heard earlier, persistence, persistence, persistence. Don't take no for an answer. Keep pressing forward. Internal resistance is fierce, so you have to build advocacy at every level, and you have to listen to your critics. Be prepared to answer the questions. You took our people, you took our money. What are we getting back for that? Where's the value? Why change? We tried it before, it didn't work. It's too expensive. We've always done it that way. You've got to change the narrative from it won't work to what do you think we should do to make it work? Bring them in as participants as part of the team. Easier said than done, but it's persistence that carries the day. So comms are super, super important. You do that by developing those personal relationships that we've talked about and that are so key to the mission across the board at Pratt & Whitney. It's what builds trust and buy-in from the team. It requires human-to-human contact. Now, I love Zoom, I love Teams, but it's not the same as being able to sit down at a table or sit across the room or sit next to each other and have a conversation. Critically important. You have to find ways to incorporate everyone into the team and include them in the wins. So those are the lessons learned, pretty consistent with what you've heard tonight. Never give up, never give up, never give up. That mentality is what made Pratt & Whitney the world's propulsion leader for over a century and will accelerate us into the future for Century 2, Century 3, and Century 4. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you to all of our panelists tonight for your insightful thoughts. Right now, we've come to the Q&A portion of our evening. If you have a question, please raise your hand and wait for a microphone to be given to you to ask your question. We want to make sure that we get you in the recording and that all the folks online can hear you. So we have 2 mic runners that will be happy to come over to you once they know you'd like to ask a question. To get us started, we do have a question that came in online, and this is for the whole panel. What are some of the biggest changes you've seen at Pratt & Whitney over your career? Dan, would you like to start us off?
No. I've been out for 25 years. So, give us a second here. Biggest change. I would say communication technology and the idea that if I had someone working for me and they were on Zoom, the first thing I'd look for when I have a conversation, usually when you're a leader, conversation's about trouble, not about parties. So the first thing when you ask someone a question, is the first thing they look at their shoes? You have nice shoes, by the way. So the shield, what I see is a shield, an electronic shield that comes from working at home is something I'm just too old. I'm 83 years old, so I came to Pratt when the 727 went into service, so it's unfair to criticize that technology. But you ask me, what was the biggest change? I would say the people you're talking to, you don't even know if they have pants on.
He doesn't have pants on, by the way. Underwear.
Only you'd know.
My amazement, or what hit me first, was demographics. Pratt & Whitney is turning into a diverse company.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's bad, given politics today. I personally think it's fantastic. I'm looking out at an audience right now that has...
Looks more like America.
It's many ages. I mean, what did we say that the average age at Pratt has turned into now? Isn't there something like a third of the workforce is now here less than 5 years? Is that correct?
37%, if I remember the number.
I mean, that's phenomenal. When I came here, everybody was old.
Exactly.
I was the young kid, you know. I was a young test engineer, you know.
Crew cuts and bow ties.
Exactly. And I look out and I see women.
Yeah.
Careful,
He always
Steve.
does.
And I
Careful, Steve.
no, but
Be careful.
what's important, I think, is that it's much more a diverse, which is much better
That's-
for the company,
Good point.
right? I mean, you look around and you see people who look like you and who share the same experiences and ages and stuff like that. Now, unfortunately, you've got a lot less product to work with these days, but the point is, you're all in the same boat together and you're all recognizing each other and, as we've been saying, helping each other. So I think that the demographics, the diversity is absolutely wonderful. I would have loved it when I came in.
Good point.
But I do think a big change that helps all of us in this room, not so much me anymore, but is the standardization with process control. I don't know if you guys still use the term standard work, but having prescribed ways of how we do our jobs. And when you go, I've been consulting for the last few years, and when you go to other businesses, they don't have that structure. They don't know how to bring someone into an organization and quickly share with them the fundamentals that are required for they can do their job, but more effectively get to where the group has to go. And Pratt has that today, and that is a significant leverage that makes you who you are today.
And I think if you take those three things and then you add in the acceleration into the digital design, digital architecture, electronic, as we talked about for digital proposals, that digitization, I guess that's not really a word, but that move into the digital to accelerate the work that Pratt has done. I think that's probably the biggest change that I've seen over the course of my time. When I started in 2015, so it hasn't been that long, but it's been a pretty amazing, I would call it truly a transformation.
Yeah, I started in grade school, so I was...
Sure,
Thank
you
you
guys
all.
got a
Do we have-
question. You got to have one.
Do we have a question in the room?
Yeah, lots of them.
While she's doing that, I'd like to make a comment. This is an incredible audience. Really.
Yeah, totally agree.
I've never seen so much attention dedicated by every individual, and I've watched every individual. I've never seen anything like it. This is a room full of high-powered people, and it's a great hope. That's it.
So back in the late 20th century, another technology, and I don't see the engine here today, was the unducted fan, like the Allison. So what was the attraction of those engines back in the day, and why didn't they catch on?
Well, it's fuel efficiency.
Yeah.
Noise is a problem with an unducted fan. It's being addressed with frequencies and what have you, but it's really fuel efficiency.
Especially cabin noise.
I used to like saying that, it's like blowing into a balloon. You make power with air and delta pressure. The more air you move, the more efficient the engine is. And those unducted fans move a boatload of air.
They also have concerns with the aircraft manufacturers. One is containment. You know, fan blades go, where do they go? You know, some of these things were hung on the back of the aircraft, some were hung under the wing, you know, not good. Thrust reverse. These engines had to have variable pitch, right? Otherwise, you're not going to get thrust reverse. So either you develop aircraft braking technology to convince people you don't need thrust reversers anymore. Well, that hasn't happened yet. Airlines, aircraft manufacturers want thrust reversers. So there are technical issues that, for instance, when IE did the superfan, the variable pitch mechanism just scared the heck out of people. How does that going to work? What are we going to do for thrust reverse?
Swiss watch.
So those technical issues. The problem was it confused everything in the time frame that GE was proposing the UDF. You know, it sort of said, well, what's the next generation of aircraft going to look like? Well, as it turns out, the next generation of aircraft is what you guys are doing. It's the very high bypass ratio geared fan. And it took a long time to get the industry to sign up for that. So I think it's going to take much longer for the industry to sign up for any UDF or anything like that.
Spencer Cianciolo, model-based definition quality. Wanted to thank you all for your time today, but also I had a question for Mike. So you talked a lot about change management and leading a diverse team. So I just wanted to know, how did you keep the motivation and the momentum going during that time for your team, working with such a diverse group to achieve your goals?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll tell you, talk about persistence. It's constant, especially for a new organization when you bring everybody together that come from different places and you try to build this organizational esprit de corps. And it starts with, I think, from the top down and the bottom up and meeting in the middle, building that trust that I talked about between the team, across the team. And so we did a lot of social events. We did a lot of social events together, both with families, and we did, even during the week, you know, we'd always have at least one of the cells. So the estimators, we'd have lunch, the leadership would have lunch with the estimators, and the next week we would have lunch with, or we'd have an hour-long session with government, with the pricing team. And it goes back to that human to human communication, the relationships, but it also want to make sure that you have that the team has the opportunity to talk to the leadership and truly tell them what the challenges are. So, you know, not the, I'm fine, it's all good. You know, we're the metrics are good. It's like, hey boss, you know, we worked over Thanksgiving because we had to get the proposal out, and we lost 5 days while everybody else was enjoying the time. What can you do? Well, Pratt doesn't do comp time, but you know what? You're not doing any proposals. Take some time with your family, and if we need you, we'll call you, but we're not going to need you. So you've got to find over and over and over. You have to find ways to bring the team together. And then once you've got that cohesive team with the trust and confidence between them, now you can start to build it outward so that the team, when they go out and talk with the programs, for example, when the base team goes out to talk with the programs, they know that they go knowing that the rest of the team is behind them, right? It's the same way with the customers. When the proposal team, the proposal lead, deputy lead, and the core proposal teams meeting with the customer, that you can feel it. You can feel the trust and the true collegial belief that the team is all together in this for success.
Hi, Brian Easton, F-117 Program Office. I loved hearing a lot of the things you guys talked about, the challenges you went through, and I think a lot of us are here because these challenges are interesting. Overcome these challenges is kind of what we do, what we thrive for. And I think it was funny listening to Dan and Steve because the first thing that happened this morning at my desk was the material manager for our group walked up, and right away, some words came out of my mouth because I knew what was going to happen or what the conversation was going to be. So, and I want to put it in perspective for some of the younger people because, there are tough days and there are good days that we have. So I wanted kind of each of you to talk about what was your worst day at Pratt & Whitney and what was your best day?
Well, I think that, we'll go down the line here. I think for me it was reduction in force days. Having to separate people that you've known for a long time and having a boss who was always on vacation when those days came around. So I think that without question, those were the most difficult days. Every other day for 37 years, I loved driving through that fence every single day. Even though it was hard. I mean, some things are harder than others, but a reduction in force was heartbreaking.
Well, I think it's hard to say because I'm with Dan. I just loved working in this place. It was my only post-college job I ever had. And it was a fantastic experience. I never stayed in any one position or place too long. I moved 13 times in 14 years. There are so many opportunities within Pratt & Whitney, moving from customer support to sales and marketing to engineering to advanced programs to, you have experiences throughout the company that, in my mind, try to experience as many of them as you can, even working in financial, which I can't say was a great time, but okay, you got the experience. I think the worst day was probably when I told the president of the company that he screwed up. That was, I was hoping that wasn't smart.
It was.
And that was when I was in a management development program, which I was in with Dan, which was headed for executive positions. So you go through this program and supposedly coming out of it, you have the opportunity. Well, I knew at that point that my chance of becoming an executive was not very good.
You showed them.
So there was a lesson learned there about speaking your mind and how you speak your mind as to what you think the right thing to do is and whether somebody's making a mistake. So that was a good lessons learned, but that was not a good day, especially when the executive vice president Pratt came into my office and gave me the bad news, you're going to Siberia, which was, again, another great experience. My best day, if I really were put up against the wall, I think it was when I became president of IAE. IAE was a unique program at Pratt & Whitney because as the president of IAE, you ran the whole program. You were responsible for sales, strategy, customer support, product support, finance. You had a P&L. You ran a company within Pratt & Whitney as president of IAE. And the people at IAE are what we've been talking about. They were fantastically dedicated, high energy, empowered people. And when I got there as president, I said, here's my #1 objective for the whole company. I want you who work here to feel this is the best place you've ever worked. That's the environment we need to set here at IE. And that wasn't easy because there was a lot of pressure from shareholders because I became president during 9/11, and those were not good times when the aviation industry essentially shut down for 6 months because of that event. So our shareholders, especially Rolls-Royce, were all over us about selling engines and spare parts and keeping up their profit plans. So that job at IE to me was fantastic. I loved every minute of it.
At least for me, there's a lot of bad days, right? I'm not sure if I have what my worst bad day is, but it's like being on a professional sports team. You're not going to win every game. So you have to recognize that you're going to lose a game. Not putting a wide body, making an engine for the 787. That was a really devastating day for people who were in the commercial business, right? Now you can let that crush you, right? And if you're a person that the glass is half empty, and you stay with that mentality, your ability to solve the next problem or the next challenge they were giving is tough because you're working in that negative environment. So, but those are going to happen, and you're just going to recognize that you can't have 365 good days. But when you have those good days, like the first day that demo engine ran in West Palm Beach, I mean, we had the test engineer on a cell phone. The engine's at idle, and he's on a cell phone, and he's talking to us. That's how quiet the engine was. I mean, you wouldn't imagine what that did to the team for morale building, right? Those good days, you got to cherish them. And you're going to have a lot of those good days. But you can't let the bad days take you down. You got to get yourself above that.
And that's pretty much a hard act to follow. I'll tell you, I came to Pratt & Whitney after I retired from the U.S. Air Force because Pratt & Whitney was had the closest culture and values to my beloved United States Air Force. Integrity first, service before self, and excellence in all we do. That defines Pratt & Whitney just as it does the U.S. Air Force. So having almost every day was a good day with little bad things that happened along the way. But the one thing that really sticks out is against all odds in a competition with GE where we had lost F-100, in an F-100 campaign, we had lost 6 or 7 straight. We won the campaign for additional Moroccan F-16s. They picked the F-100. And they picked the F-100 because their F-100 fleet that they had already was powered by Pratt & Whitney, and they said, despite the fact that GE is less expensive, you treat us like partners, not as customers. And so that win was probably the biggest, and not biggest, but it was one of those days that stands out as the reason why we all work or have worked at Pratt & Whitney.
Thank you all for those answers. We do have one question that we'd like to end with for tonight. How do you recommend dealing with the stress or doubts that may come with a new job?
I start with a prayer. Divine intervention goes a long way. Right? But no, it's tough. I mean, you're always challenged, and especially, I think, when you go from being considered an expert. I remember, I was in engineering for the first 12 years of my career here, and then they put me into marketing. I mean, putting an engineer in a marketing position, right? And I really felt like I was a fish out of water, right? But what they were looking for was not to be a salesman, but to know how to present what we do and how we do it and the value of what we do to a customer. And so, although you really feel uneasy in saying, I can't market, I'm not a seller, I'm an introvert normally, that job made me be an extrovert, And so I went from my closed environment and forced me to do something that was outside of my nature. But with time, you get there. It doesn't happen easy, but as Mike said during his presentation, change is hard, and we all resist change. But change grows. So if you don't take the change, you don't grow. Anyway.
I'll give you an image that you might find useful. I learned it playing baseball, or attempting to. When you're really stressed or insecure, is probably a better word, is get your uniform dirty. Just get your uniform dirty. Get out there. It's a contact sport, right? and it's encouraged by the way we evaluate people to some extent. Not that I know how to do it any better, but when you group people and then quote, I don't know if you still do it anymore, stack people, you get some kind of relative comparison among a small group of people. But that's not, relativism doesn't make the world go around. Absolute does. And all those people that are nervous and competitive are stressed out because of that process. I don't have an answer for that. But if you're a leader, don't worry about that. Worry about absolute value. And if you have nervous and stressed people, and you better have, tell them to get the uniform dirty. Just get dirty. Go get hurt. Rub a little dirt on it. Put some ice on it. Come back. That sounds crude and insensitive. But use the sports analogy. Say, just get dirty. Just go get dirty. Make a mistake. And if you tell them that, they'll be, oh, okay. Maybe. I mean, some people can't be saved. But 99.9% can be. And it's insignificant to people that can't be saved. Get dirty.
So in my 34-year Air Force career, we moved 22 times. So 22 different jobs. When I was a captain, so I'd been in the Air Force for about 6 or 7 years, I had a sage, what I considered old, probably, a 35, 40-year-old lieutenant colonel pulled me aside and he said, all right, so I was getting ready to go to my next assignment, and he said, Moeller, just remember, bloom where you're planted, and everything will be okay. Learn as much as you can. It's a great opportunity. And if you bloom where you're planted, the next place that you go to will be better, bigger, and even more challenging, and I bet you'll bloom again. So that's that mentoring advice stayed with me now for over 40 years.
I'm probably the wrong guy to ask that question. I never held the same position at Pratt & Whitney for more than 4 years. That's the amount of moving around I did. One thing that helped all the way through it, though, was I was very lucky to have mentors. And I don't know if you've started that or thinking about that, but I was very, very lucky to have some really good mentors to go to provide advice to me. Rob's dad was one of them. Nick Tomasetti, Jill, Nick, you're here. He was a huge mentor of mine. Almost everywhere I went, there was a mentor, and then there was a mentor who was continuous, who would kind of tell me, no, you kind of need to go do this now. You need to get this experience. You need to try this. And there were failures. Like I said, I didn't get the V on the 737, but it was an experience that fortunately I had mentors to discuss it with and fall back on. So I think, especially if you're just starting out your career, finding a mentor or more than one, and being open to change, in what you're doing, what you think your future might be. I think that's critical, and that's just good advice anywhere, right? That's kind of good advice, I think, for any kind of business you're in or what you plan to do. And you know what? If you don't like what you're doing, don't be afraid to leave. Yeah. Don't be afraid to go try a new job. There's lots of them just within this company alone. I mean, I worked for Pratt & Whitney for 34 years, and it's the only company I worked for 34 years. But I never had a feeling that I was getting stale in the job that I was doing. So that's kind of what I recommend.
If you're not having fun, you might be doing it wrong.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right to that.
Thank you all very much.
Before you step away, we want to give you a little.
Here you have gifts.
Gifts. Woohoo! Lovely
Gifts.
parting
We
gifts.
love gifts.
Yes.
Parting gifts.
It's ticking.
Yeah. Oh, thank you very much. Well, being in military, do you have to declare this?
Nope.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. No, I'm sure it's under 25 bucks.
Let's have another round of applause for our panelists tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job, guys.
All right, talk about a tough act to follow. My goodness. But I'm happy to be here tonight to talk to you about membership. But before I do that, I would like to show appreciation to the volunteers who made this night possible. One person, I believe, I can't see her because I don't have my glasses on, but I think Betty's sitting back there at the table. She is my event mentor and very important to this event. Everybody who you saw at the table selling books, talking to you about membership, the people out giving you your name tags, all of those people are here as volunteers. So thank you. So I've got a question for you. What do those volunteers, the legends that we had up on stage tonight, and the incredible Hall of Fame inductees all have in common? Passion. Passion for what we do. This isn't just a place to work. This is a lifetime experience. And that doesn't leave out you. All of you are here. It is currently 8:09 on a Thursday night. I'd usually be in bed, and I'm sure you would be too. But you're here tonight learning about our history, seeing our experts, and enjoying connection. Membership. That's what I'm here to talk about. My name is Debbie Petrelli. I am the Secretary of the Dependable Engines Association and the membership chair. And I think, as Ray said earlier, really every employee and retiree of Pratt & Whitney should be a member of this organization. And you heard a theme throughout this night. It was about connection. Ray spoke about connection. Dan, Steve, Bob, and Mike all talked about connection. And that's what we are here to do. We're here to connect people. And the ladies who were at the table for the membership, they said, well, tell people what membership includes. So there is a $30 minimum lifetime membership fee. And that includes, number one, a really cool serialized Dependable Engines Association coin. If you have joined and have not picked up your coin yet, they're over at that table and we can get them free at the end of the night. And if you join tonight, you can also get your coin. So that's one. Number two, do I have members in this room? Who's a member? How many of you have gotten an email from me? Or maybe 50, 60 emails from me? This year's all about engagement. So we want to make sure that we're making those connections, that there are activities that we can all be involved in. We are doing webinars. We are also having monthly socials. Some of those are just like meeting down at Carmine's, but we've also gone out to Neem to do a tour. We're going to be having an event in here in the near future. I just have to schedule that with John. I think it's going to be a Saturday in May. And if you're a member, you will get an email about that. And in September, you probably saw on the screen earlier, we do have a golf tournament coming up, September 18th. That's one theme. Another theme for us, which Jack will talk a little bit more about, is investment. We became a nonprofit organization, not just to get together and have a good time, but to give back to our community. And one of the ways we are looking to do that in the very near future is investing in this museum. It's a great museum. There are a lot of upgrades for the 100th anniversary, but we want to do more. We want this to be a place where families can come on a weekend. We want new employees to come in here with their mentors and walk around and learn all about how this company was built. And that takes investment. So I am going to hand it over to my favorite finance committee chair, Jack Seuss.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening. I'll be very brief, and the $30 minimum donation is low, so get it now before it goes up. You know, this is my 14th, almost 15th year at Pratt. There are a lot of good companies out there where you can make a living. There's very few great companies where you can build a life, and Pratt is one of those businesses. And so like Debbie and Ray said, we are a nonprofit. We do rely on membership support and your donations. So if you're not a member, scan the QR code. There's also one on your table. Join. If you are a member, consider a gift. If you don't know if you're a member, assume you're not and join again. But thank you. This has been an incredible night. And we really appreciate your support. And with Debbie's leadership, the museum, the archives, the future Hall of Fame is going to be a fantastic place for future, current, and past employees of Pratt. So thank you very much.
And now we'll hand things back over to the president of Dependable Engines Association, Ray McFall.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you, Debbie and Jack. And before I make any concluding remarks, and I have just a couple, I would like to invite Rick Derlew and Jill Albertelli come up, and if you'd like to make a few comments about the organization, you're welcome to.
Good evening, everyone. You know, again, I know they recognize themselves. Important that we, as leaders in Pratt Whitney, give a round of applause to the Dependable Engines Association for such a great night tonight. So thank you, guys. You know, as I was listening to everyone today, it made me think of something that many of us in this room think about often, and that is that we stand on the shoulders of those before us, right? We always say that. And when I think about the Hall of Fame inductees, and I think about Dan, Steve, M2, and Bob, you can't find better examples of shoulders right there. So, guys, thank you very much. And I'll make a few observations. I'll be brief on each one of my friends here. So for Dan, you know, the kit and business model, we're changing that. All right, we no longer have free or best offer. We're trying to get a little more price these days, but you know, it's hard when you put milk out every day to get those cats to go away. But we're getting there. For Steve, I want to give you some confidence that, you know, the GTF and Pratt is back in the single aisle market, right? We have delivered 7,000 plus engines already, and we're just starting. When you think about our plan of record, we're gonna have 20,000 plus engines. This will be the largest program in history, and it will position us for next gen single aisle, and we'll be on Boeing and Airbus. So we'll take care of that. For Bob Saya, I'm still looking for 20% maintenance costs. I haven't found it, but I'm an optimist. And for M2, I would simply say, you know, I've never been in ME, but I've been to many air shows with my friend Jill, and there's nothing more incredible than seeing an F-135 when you're sitting on the chalet viewing deck and seeing that thing just hovering there. So, Mike, congratulations on that as well. So, Jill?
Note I stepped back when Rick started. I wasn't sure how long that would be, but all good, really good points. The only thing I would add is just a thank you to all of you. I'll echo the fact that this is a Thursday evening. I mean, I don't have a life, so I know why I'm here. No, just kidding. I did show up a little late, so I will say to my two former bosses, both Dan and Steve, apologize for that. Apparently, they didn't either recognize that I worked for them or that I was a woman when I did, but that's okay. We are much more diverse than we were back then. And to Bob, I think always, anytime you listen to Bob as well, it's a learning experience. And none of us take any of that for granted from any of you. And M2, who, you know, he puts up there his title, but he's a general. And he's like, you know, I've been to war and I've been to Pratt. Don't ask me which is harder. So sometimes there are tough days, but we get through them all. And I'll go back to what Dan said at the beginning, There isn't a person in this entire company that if you ask them to help you with something, that they won't do it. And that's the culture that we have here. That's the culture that I love. And even with 37% of the employees with only less than 5 years, it's the culture we continue to build. And all of you are showing it by being here tonight. So thank you to the Luminaries for setting this up. And I'm going to turn it back over to Ray.
Thank you, Jill. Thank you. Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Jill. So before we conclude tonight's program, I need to recognize some other people. Our board of directors for the nonprofit include Matt Teicholz, Tom Preet, Steve Shepro, Mary Ann Cannon down in West Palm Beach, Tim Cormier, who's sitting right down here, and Naveen Kalab, who's an executive with Pratt & Whitney Canada. These senior executives understand and appreciate the value proposition for employees, for the company, and for the community. I also want to recognize our volunteers and our planning team. They've been mentioned a couple times. I'll mention a few now. Our MVP, Debbie Petrelli. Jack Seuss leading our strategic fundraising campaign. Betty Higgins, our organization's vice president. Tiger Rhodes, our organization's treasurer. And the host of key volunteers that were already recognized earlier. We couldn't do it without you, so thank you. As we grow, there's going to be other opportunities for anyone and everyone that wants to get involved with this organization, and we're happy to have you. You heard about our golf tournament in September. We look forward to that, becoming another premier connecting event and challenging all of you to pair up and make foursomes of both current employees and retirees. Go out there and spend 4.5 hours paired up with current employees and retirees together. So more to follow on the golf tournament. We're really looking forward to that. And in conclusion, find that person you want to speak to. I know it's getting a little late for some. Find that person you want to speak to. Make that connection or ask that question maybe you didn't have a chance to ask. We look forward to seeing you all at the next event. Be safe on the way home and have a good night. Thank you.